Mic
Yeah.
check. One, two, three, four,
Yeah.
five. One, two, three, four, five.
Swelling's gone down.
One.
Remember how close you have to be.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending. I will open the Board of Selectmen meeting. This is the call to order. Number 2, approve the March 23rd and March 24th Selectmen meeting minutes. We were all at the meetings, so we can vote on them together. So do I have a motion?
Second.
And all in favor? We don't have to name
Yes.
names. I know, I love it. One,
Remember how
this is the
close you have
public
to be.
forum. This
Good
is an
evening,
opportunity
everyone.
for anyone who wants to address the
thank you
Board of
for
Selectmen
attending.
with
I
any
will
issue
open the
that is
Board of
not on the
Selectmen,
agenda. Meeting. This is the call to order. Number 2,
I see no
approve the March
hands. We will
23rd
move
and
on.
March 24th
Just make sure
Selectmen
to ask
meeting
Dave
minutes.
about the virtual meeting room.
We were all at the meetings, so we can
Oh,
vote
how many people are here?
Well, if
vote on
there's
them
anybody with their
together.
hand raised in the
So do I have a
virtual
motion?
Oh, I thought they couldn't speak.
Second.
No, they can.
Okay. And
Dave,
all
do
in
we have any
favor?
hands?
We don't have to name names. I know, I love it. Very good.
Thank
This is
you.
the public forum. This is an opportunity
therefore,
for
we can
anyone who
go
wants
on
to
with
address the Board of
number
Selectmen
4,
with any issue
review
that is not on
and
the
approve
agenda.
the
Proposed warrant articles for the town meeting in June,
I
and
see
the
no
budget board
hands.
will
We
have
will
to
move
be
on.
called to
Just
order.
make sure to ask Dave about the virtual meeting room.
I call the budget board to order.
Oh, how many people
Thank
are here?
you.
Well, if there's anybody with their hand raised in the virtual meeting.
Oh, I thought they couldn't speak. Oh,
No, they can.
Okay.
Dave, do we have any hands?
And we as selectmen did do some voting earlier at meetings on the,
So therefore, we can
on the
go
budget.
with
And there were just a
number
few
4,
articles that remain
review
that need to be
and
voted
approve the
on. Proposed warrant
And
articles for
I'm
the
going to
town
have Tracy
meeting
take
in
you through the
June,
votes.
and the budget
Thank
board
you.
will have to be,
Okay,
Call
does
to
everybody
order.
have a copy of the warrant? So I have highlighted in yellow where the selectmen will be voting, and in gray where the budget board has to vote. So the first one will be Article 2, and it's more of a housekeeping article. It talks
We-
about
we as
interest
selectmen
that we
did,
can charge,
do some
setting the interest
voting
rate,
earlier at
and
meetings
authorizing the tax
on the,
collector to enter it
on
into
the
agreements
budget.
with
And there were
taxpayers
just
for
a
the
few
tax
articles
club.
that
So this
remained
one,
that
just
need
the
to
Board
be
of
voted on.
Selectmen will vote.
And
I'm going to have Tracy
So
take
we'll
you
need a
through the votes.
motion.
I need a motion. Thank you.
So moved.
Okay, does everybody have a copy of
All in
the
favor?
warrant? So I have highlighted in
5
yellow where the
voting
selectmen will
yes.
be voting, and okay? in gray And then the next where the article budget will be board has to Article vote. 3. So the And this first will be one will be Article voted on 2, by both And boards. it's more of a And again, this is housekeeping more of a article. It housekeeping talks about, issue. Talks
interest
about
that we can
abatements
charge,
and
setting the
applicable
interest rate,
and authorizing the So tax we will collector have a to enter motion from the
into
Board of
agreements with
Selectmen,
taxpayers
So
for the
moved.
tax club.
All
So
in
this one,
favor?
just the Board of Selectmen will
5 in
vote.
favor.
Okay, and the budget board? So we'll need a motion.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
All those in favor?
All in favor?
Michelle? Yep.
We have 5
that would be
voting yes.
Dave?
Okay, and then the next
vote
article
seven.
will be
7.
Article 3, and this will be
voting?
voted on by both boards. And again, this is more of a housekeeping issue.
We do.
Talks about abatements and
All right,
so the applicable next interest. article is Article 4.
So
And
we will
again,
have a
this
motion
talks, it's
from
more
the
of a
Board of
housekeeping. It
Selectmen.
talks about
So moved.
accepting prepayment of
favor?
taxes, acceptance of
favor.
easement deeds on
budget
behalf
board?
of the town,
Do I have a motion?
and accepting unconditional and conditional gifts of money. And this one is just the Board of Selectmen.
So moved.
All in favor? We have 5, 7.
7.
And we're going to skip a few articles because you both voted at your previous meetings. So now we'll go to Article 11. And this one is to vote to
All right, so
appropriate
the
next article is $3,231,318 from estimated non-property tax revenues, $200,000 from undesignated fund balance, and $700,000 from capital projects reserve account to reduce the property tax commitment, and both boards will vote.
And this one is just the Board of
So
Selectmen.
moved. So moved.
All in favor? All in favor? We have 5. We have 5, okay.
And we're going to skip a few articles because you both voted at your previous meetings. So now we'll go to Article 11. And this one is to vote to appropriate. And then the last one will be Article 12. $318. And this one is for both boards to see if the town will vote to appropriate $385,000 from coronavirus, local fiscal recovery, American Rescue Plan, Act, federal grant funds, and both for governmental services capital purchasing. And then
All
there's
in
a breakdown of how that will be
And
distributed.
and just a note, you have 385 at the top, at 386
Okay.
and lower, so I don't think a dollar's going to matter.
That's 1,000.
Yeah, Denise, do you know which is? And then the last one will be
I mean, yeah,
Article
that's what I meant.
12. And this one is for both boards to see if the town will vote to appropriate $385,000 from coronavirus,
Thank you.
local fiscal recovery, American Rescue Plan, Act,
Second.
federal grant
All in
funds,
favor?
for governmental services capital purchasing. And then there's a
So it's the
breakdown of how
385 that
will
you're
be
approving.
And just a note, you have 385 at the top, at 386 and
Okay.
lower, so I don't think a dollar's going to matter.
And that's that.
Very good,
Thank you.
thank you, Tracy.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Denise, do you know which is correct?
I mean, yeah, that's what I meant. Now,
Oh, I see.
Adjourning?
Thank you. Yes, if you want to.
Sure.
Second.
Do I have a motion
All in
from the
favor?
budget board to adjourn? Second. All those in
So it's the
favor?
385 that you're approving.
All right, we're adjourned.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, and thank you for all coming
Yes.
tonight.
Thank you for all your work. You
Yeah,
help make this a much easier process for everybody.
yeah, it was.
Thank you.
And we thank you. Now. Yes, if you want to.
Do I have a motion from the budget board to
It was a nice process.
all those in favor?
Okay, we're going to carry on. Thank you. And we're going to carry on our meeting.
Thank you for all your work. You
Yeah,
help make this a much easier process for everybody.
yeah, it was. And so we will now continue with our meeting. We're at number 6, presentation of wastewater budget.
No, we gotta do five first.
We got
Oh, I'm sorry. Consider the request for street opening permit and street lane closure on Ocean Avenue. Do you want to explain a little bit? Oh,
Hi
hi.
Sheila, how are you?
Okay, we're going to carry on.
So we recently
We're
received a
gonna carry
request
on
from
our
Rex
meeting.
Corporation. They're the contractor that is doing all the site work at the Colony Hotel for their new expansion. They requested both a street opening and a street
So
lane
we will now
closure for this
continue with our
project.
meeting.
Since I
We're
wrote
at
the
number
memo,
6,
they're
presentation of
looking at a
wastewater
different
budget.
design, but this was originally
gotta
to
do
install
five
a
first.
new sewer manhole.
I'm sorry.
Which would
Consider
allow them,
the request for
our
street opening
current main
permit
to
and
accept
street
the
lane
sewage
closure
coming
on
from
Ocean
the
Avenue.
new
Do you want to explain a little
new
bit?
campus.
Oh, hi.
Hi Sheila, how are you? We've asked since then to go into an existing manhole. Received a request from Rex because it'll be
Corporation.
a little bit less intrusive.
They're the contractor that is doing all the
in our
site
main
work at the Colony
and
Hotel
have
for
the
their new
bypass
expansion.
pump. So they're
They
currently looking
requested
at going
both
into an
a,
existing
street
manhole.
opening and a
But
street
the new
lane
water
closure
main,
for
there
this
may be some
project.
conflicts there that they're
Since I
looking
wrote
at.
the memo,
But either way, they
they're
will need
looking
a
at a
street
different
opening and a
design,
street
but this
lane
was
closure
originally
to
to
accomplish
install
one of these
a
two
new sewer
options.
manhole,
They don't
which
expect
would
either one of them
allow
to take
them,
more than a day.
our current main to
We've already
accept
passed
the,
this through the
sewage
police
coming
department and
from
the fire
the new,
department. They didn't have any concerns with the traffic control.
new campus.
And they have posted a bond for the street
We've
opening.
asked since then to go into an existing manhole.
It's just gonna be one
a little
lane
bit
out.
less intrusive.
So it's still
you
on
know,
Ocean
in our
Avenue
main. and
It
we'll
is,
avoid having
yep.
a bypass
And
pump.
so they'll
So they're
alternate
currently
traffic.
looking at
So
going
one
into
lane
an
will be
existing
closed
manhole.
and,
But
they'll
the new
alternate
water
back and
main,
forth.
there may be some
Okay.
conflicts
Good
there
time
that
of the
they're
year for
looking
it.
at.
Yes.
But either way, they will
I
need a
move
street
we
opening and a
approve
street lane
the,
closure to
street
accomplish
opening
one of
request.
these two options.
All in favor?
They don't expect either one of them to take more than a day.
And we have 5.
We've already passed this through the police department and the fire department. They didn't have any
Thank you.
concerns with the
And
traffic.
now the
Go
present,
anywhere.
now the presentation of
bond for
wastewater
the street
budget.
opening. It's just gonna be one lane, Alan.
So it's still on Ocean Avenue then?
It is, yep.
and so they'll
Okay,
alternate traffic. So one lane will be closed. So
and,
if you want, next page.
Okay,
Dave?
it's a good time of the year for it.
Great, thank you. So this is just an overall of the budget. We kind of simplified this and
favor?
broke this down. You'll see some
And we have
larger
five.
changes, decreases associated with the personnel and benefits.
Thank you.
This is
And now the
due to
presentation.
reallocation between
Now the presentation of wastewater.
the three
budget.
managers when we restructured. So that's why you're seeing a decrease in both the personnel and benefits line items. The increase in the utilities
Okay,
of $5,237 was for fuel.
if you want, next page.
That's due to the fuel increase prices that we're
thank
seeing.
So this is just an
Services, that
of the
will be the
budget.
largest
We
change that
kinda
you see,
simplified this and broke this
$101,000. You'll see
this was
some
for our
larger
intent to
changes,
start having our
sludge
decreases
hauled off
associated
at
with
landfill
personnel
this
and
year.
benefits. This is due
And
to
I
the
can get into that
reallocation
in the
between,
later slides, there's a little bit more
the three
information to go
managers
along with that.
when we restructured.
Insurance
so
and
that's why you're
supplies
seeing
and
a decrease,
equipment
in
and
both
repairs and
personnel and
maintenance, we are
personnel
down in
and
some of those
benefits line
categories. That's due to some
The
purchases
increase in
that we made,
utilities
improvements that we made at some of the pump stations.
was for fuel.
Debt service, you'll see the $44,113. Services, that's the 40% on the mill rate that goes to the users of the wastewater system.
This was for our
for the
intent to
bond
start having
that we
our
currently
sludge
have.
hauled off and landfilled this year.
And I can get into that. If we go down, the transfer is in for the debt. That is the 60%
Insurance and supplies and
that goes
equipment
on the
and
taxpayer
repairs and
for the current
maintenance,
bond that we
we're down
have.
in some of those categories. That's due to
And then the
some purchases that we made,
$52,320
that we made
is
at
for the
some of
user
pump
fees.
stations.
Overall,
Debt
we're
service,
looking at a
you'll see the
3.93% increase in the budget. The sewer
That's
user
the
rate
40%
for this current
on the
year
mill
was
rate that goes to
$480.63.
users,
And the
of the
proposed
wastewater
rate for the coming year would be
for the bond
$499.52. Next slide. If we go down, the transfer is in for the debt. So obviously, we're seeing this town-wide with the inflation. Costs of everything are going up.
And then the
Where this seems to affect us the most, the increased cost of steel, increased cost of oil, as it relates to both maintenance supplies, lubricants, fuel for transportation, et cetera. And we're also seeing the increase in operating supplies and capital equipment due to material manufacturing and shipping costs. We're not any different with the supply chain issues, and that seems to be affecting us there as well. Next slide. So obviously, we're seeing this town-wide with the inflation. Costs of everything. You folks have already seen this, but fuel, obviously, we did put in another $6,960 this year for our fuel due to the increased cost of oil right now. We added another $714 for the gasoline line item. Due to material manufacturing. Diesel, we did reduce. The reason that we were able to reduce this is we had an increased amount in that line item last year for the initial fill of the new emergency generator, because that had a 1,750-gallon tank. We now have a better understanding of just how much fuel we're going through with that during its weekly exercise. So we were able to reduce that line item by $3,250 this year for our fuel. And next slide. Increased cost of oil right now. One of the other large increase that you see that goes back to the purchases would be for our lab
Diesel,
supplies.
we did reduce.
So beginning in April of 2023, Maine DEP has added the requirement for us to start testing for enterococci bacteria. We currently don't have the lab equipment for that, so the lab equipment is a cost of $10,500, and this will be for the new IDEX Quantitrade sealer, incubator, and the supplies that we need to go with this. And next slide. And next slide. One of the other large increase that you see, so it goes back unfortunately, would be for this is another common theme that we've been seeing beginning in April of 2023 here in town is the PFAS. So this obviously started coming to light just a couple of years ago. 2 years ago, we actually stopped releasing our compost at the plant out of concern for the chemical in the compost. This kind of brought about, us looking into researching better equipment to dewater our sludge so that we could look at having it hauled off.
Unfortunately.
And as you know, in spring of
this is
'21,
another
we
common
actually
theme that we've
pilot
been
tested a
seeing
bunch
lately,
of new
both in the
presses
news
at the
and
plant.
here in town is
The ultimate
is the
goal, obviously,
PFAS.
was to produce a drier cake
So
that
this
we
obviously
could
started
have,
coming to light
hauled
just a
off
couple years
by
ago.
one of the waste haulers.
2 years ago, we actually stopped.
And we did do
releasing
that
our
research, and we
compost
have
at the
picked our
plant,
equipment.
out of concern.
Next slide.
For the chemical and the compost. This kind of
But
brought
then what
about,
came along, and this
you
just
know, us
recently
looking
happened
into,
over the last
researching better
4 to 5
equipment
months
to,
now.
dewater our
2 new
sludge
bills
so
were
that we could look at
proposed.
having it hauled off.
One was LD
And as you know,
1911,
in spring of '21,
and the other was
we
LD
actually pilot tested
1639.
a bunch of new presses at the
And this is
plant.
what's going to impact
The ultimate goal,
our,
obviously, was
our
to produce a drier
coming
cake that,
operations.
we could have.
So
hauled
Bill
off
LD 1911,
by one of the waste haulers.
basically this, in summary,
Um,
it prohibits
and we
the
did do
land
that research, and
application
we have
or
picked
land
our
applying of
equipment.
sludge
Next slide.
that every municipality has done in the past. So it
Then what
prohibits,
came
you know,
along,
us
and this
composting,
just
releasing that
recently happened
compost,
over the
and
last
allowing
4 to
people to
5
use
months
that for
now.
whatever it is that they wanted to
2 new
use it.
bills were proposed.
LD
One was
1639
LD 1911,
doesn't,
and the other was
it indirectly affects us. It affects
1639.
more like Casella,
And this is what's
with
going
their
to
landfills.
impact
It regulates just how
our,
much outside waste they
coming
can bring into
operations.
Maine.
So
And they had
Bill
been
LD
using this
1911,
waste and
basically
processing
this,
it
in
and using it
summary,
as
it
ground
prohibits
cover
the land
at their current
application or
landfills.
land applying of sludge.
And now this
that
bill that's being
every
proposed
municipality has done in the
is
past.
obviously going to affect just how
So
much
it
material they're
prohibits,
able to,
you know, us
you know,
composting,
use to
releasing that compost,
cover
allowing,
their existing
people to use
landfills.
that for whatever it is that they want.
So, what does that mean for us? Ultimately,
LD
it means that
1639,
Casella may not have the
doesn't-
capacity to accept our
It
sludge.
indirectly affects us. It
We
affects
don't
more
have
like
those
Casella,
answers yet. I just
with
found
their
out today that
landfills.
LD 1911
Regulates just
did
how much
pass,
outside
this
waste
week.
they can bring into Maine.
So
And they had been
the effects of
using
this are
waste and
remain to be
processing
seen at
it
this
and
point.
using it as ground cover,
Casella
at their
has,
current landfills.
you know, more research to do on their own
And now this
and
bill that's being
reorganization
proposed,
inside to decide
is
how they're
obviously
going to
gonna
handle
affect
this,
just how
because
much
this
material
affects
they're
them on
able
a
to,
number of different
you know,
levels.
use to
Next
cover
slide.
their existing landfills. So, what does that mean
so
for us? Ultimately, it means
Basically,
that, Casella
you know,
may
we
not
had
have
entered into an
capacity to accept our
RFP
sludge.
back
We
in
don't
September
have those
with a
answers
number
yet.
of the other
I just found out
wastewater
today that
departments
LD
that
1911
are here in
did
southern
pass,
Maine that have their
this
sludge
week.
hauled off. We
So
went out to
the-
bid
the
as a
effects of
group
this
to try
are
to secure the best
remain to be
pricing that
seen
we
at this
could to
point.
have our sludge hauled
Casella
off.
has,
And
more
initially,
research to do on their own
Casella came back with a
and
price for
reorganization
Kennebunkport of
inside to decide how they're gonna
$158
handle this,
a
'cause
ton
this affects them on a
to have
number
it
of different
hauled off.
levels. Next slide.
As you know, things progressed and these bills were proposed.
So
You know, Casella has
Basically,
kind of since had
you know,
to
we
take a
had
step back and
entered
try
into
to
an RFP,
look at
back
this
in
and
September,
decide how this
with
is
a
going to
number of
affect
the
them and
other
the prices.
wastewater departments that are
Next
here
slide,
in
please.
southern Maine that have their sludge hauled off. We went out to bid as a group
On
to
March
try to
30th,
secure the best pricing that
Casella
we
met
could
with
to
us
have our
in a
sludge
virtual
hauled
meeting,
off.
as well as several
And
of the other
initially,
superintendents
Casella came
superintendents
back with a price for
in the
Kennebunkport
area to
of
discuss this.
$158 a ton.
Basically, our
have
position
it
was that
hauled
they didn't
off.
have enough information yet
Um,
to provide us with an
as,
answer as to
you know, things
just how much
progressed and
capacity
these
they were
bills
going to
were
have, or
proposed,
just what those prices were
you
going
know,
to be to
Casella
have the
has
sludge
kinda
hauled
since had to
off.
take a step back and try to
In trying to
look at this
understand
and
what we
decide
might be
how
looking
this is gonna
at,
affect them and the prices.
they said that it was not
Next slide, please.
a far reach to expect that those prices could increase $80 a ton
On
over
March
what they had
30th,
already proposed.
Casella met with
So
us,
that basically
in a
puts
virtual
us
meeting,
at around
as well as, several of the
$238
other
a ton.
superintendents.
The issue that
in
we
the area
have
to discuss
also is
this.
that the minimum haul is 15 tons.
Basically, our position was that
during
they
the
didn't have
winter
enough
months, we're not
information yet to
producing
provide us
15
with an
tons
answer as to
in a week, in a
just how much
given week.
capacity they were gonna have, or just
So
what those prices were
even
gonna
if we
be
have to have that
sludge
dumpster hauled off, we're going to get billed for 15
in trying
tons.
to understand what we might be looking at.
So we've estimated 400 tons of
They
sludge
said
at
that it was
$250 a
not,
ton for half the year.
a far reach to expect
So this
that those
results in about
prices could increase
$100,000 for
$80
half a
ton
year of
over
hauling
what
the
they had
sludge
already
off.
proposed.
So
So
we're
that
going to look to
basically puts
mitigate
us
some of
at
that
around
cost. You know,
$238
we
a
don't
ton.
have to have the dumpster hauled
The issue that
every
we
week,
have also
but what
is
we
that
don't know
minimum
yet
haul
is
is
just what
15
we're going to
tons.
run into for odor
During
issues.
the winter months, we're not
We also
producing
have the
15
issue of
tons
freezing temperatures
in a
in
week,
the
in a
winter
given
time.
week.
So we can't simply just bring the dumpster outside.
We have to have that
because if
dumpster
it
hauled off,
freezes,
we're gonna get
when
billed
Casella
for
comes to haul
15
it,
tons.
then obviously the product's frozen and they can't dump it.
So we've estimated 400 tons of
So
sludge.
this is gonna be kind of a little bit of a learning process for us, and we're gonna have to
So
figure
this
out
results in
ways that
about
we can
$100,000
mitigate,
for
you know,
half a
frequent
year hauling
hauls
sludge off.
to bring that number down.
We're gonna
and
look to
not,
mitigate
you know,
some of that
have the
cost.
odor issues to contend
You know,
with.
we don't have to have the
How-
dumpster
how many,
hauled every week.
tons less
But what we don't
than the
know yet
15
is just what we're going to
do
run
you do in
into
the
for
winter
odor
per week?
issues.
Kind
s-
of estimate.
We also have the issue
Sure,
of
so
freezing
during the winter
temperatures in
months,
the
we're
wintertime.
normally
So we
pressing
can't
on 2
simply just
days
bring the
a week.
dumpster outside,
During
because
that
if it
time,
freezes,
it's an
when
average of 3
Casella
buckets of
comes to haul
sludge.
it, then obviously the
Each one
product's
of those
frozen and they
buckets
can't dump
is
it.
just about, you know,
So
2
this
tons.
is gonna be
So
kind of a little bit of a
we would
learning
be somewhere
process for
between
us, and we're gonna
8
have
and
to
maybe
figure out
12
ways that
tons
we
a
can
week during the
mitigate,
wintertime.
you know, frequent hauls to bring that number down.
No, we
and
don't.
not, you
No.
know,
The
have
issue,
the odor issues to contend with.
correct, right. We may be able to go 2
um,
weeks.
tons
The issue that we
less
have to deal with,
than the
though, is
15
will be the odor.
we do in the winter?
You know, I think the odor would be less of an issue during the winter
Sure,
months because
so
of the
during the
cold
winter
weather.
months, we're
But obviously, if we
normally
bring the
pressing
dumpster
on 2
outside,
days a week.
the product's gonna freeze,
During
and
that
then
time,
Casella won't be able to
It's an
dump it
average of
either.
3 buckets of sludge. Each one of those buckets
We
is
don't know
just
that
about,
yet
you
either.
know, 2
It was either gonna
tons,
be their Hawk
so
Ridge or Juniper
We would be somewhere
Hill.
between 8 and maybe 12
But again,
tons a
they
week during the
can't even
wintertime.
answer that yet because they just don't understand how much capacity
we
they're gonna
don't.
have at this
No.
point. The issue with the recent bills.
Correct, right.
We may be able to go 2 weeks. The issue that we have to deal
Next
with,
slide.
though, will be the odor.
You
So
know,
in
I
the
think the
capital
odor would
this
be less
year,
of an issue during the
we're
winter
looking
months
to
because of the cold
replace
weather.
both
But
of
obviously,
our
if we bring the dumpster outside,
anoxic
the
mixers.
product's gonna freeze.
These
and then
reside in the
Casella won't be
anoxic
able to
zone
dump
in
it.
our aeration tanks. These are submersed in
We don't know that yet
liquid
either.
all day long.
It was either gonna be
24
their
hours a
Hawk
day,
Ridge or
7 days a
Juniper
week,
Hill.
365 days a year.
But again, they can't even
The
answer
current
that
maintenance
yet
plan is to
because
pull
they
them
just don't understand
once a
how much
year,
capacity they're gonna
change the
have at
oil
this
in the
point.
gear drive box.
with
You have to
the,
repack the front
recent
of it
bills.
with grease. And what we found is,
Next slide.
you know, we've had to do this more and more frequently because
in
we're
the
getting
capital
water
this year,
intrusion.
we're
Last year, we
looking to
did have one
replace,
that sustained
both
some
of our
pretty good damage to
anoxic
it because
mixers.
water got into it.
These reside in the anoxic zone.
We had to
in
send
our
that out to
aeration
the tune of
tanks.
$7,500
These
just
are
to have that one
submersed
section of the
in
gearbox replaced.
liquid all day long.
So they're expensive
24
to
hours a day,
maintain
7
and they're
days a week,
problematic.
365 days a year.
These are in excess of 20 years old at
The
this
current maintenance
point,
plan is to
so
pull
they've
them,
already,
once
you
a
know,
year,
given us their
change the oil
useful
in the gear
life.
drive
So
box.
this is
You have to
what we're
repack
looking
the
to
front of it.
upgrade this year, 2 of them
with
at a
grease,
cost of
and what we found
$50,000.
is, you
The
know, we've
new
had to
design,
do
the
this more and more
gearbox, the
frequently,
motor and
because we're
everything
getting
is
water
elevated
intrusion.
above
Last year, we did
the
have
mixed
one
liquor,
that,
so none of it's
sustained some
submersed.
pretty good
They're very
damage,
easy to
to
work
it
on.
because water got
Oil
into
changes
it.
can be done from the bridge.
We had to send
So
that
I think
out
they're gonna
to
be a
the
much
tune of
more reliable
$7,500
design.
just to have that one
And
section
in
of the gearbox
the research that we've
replaced.
done in talking to
So
people,
they're expensive to maintain.
these
and
have been much better
problematic.
for other plants.
These are in excess of 20 years old at this point.
Next
so
slide.
They've already, you know, given us their useful life.
So this is just a summary
what we're looking to
again.
upgrade this
So we
year.
have a total
2 of
right
them
now
at
of
a cost of
2,490
$50,000.
user units.
The new design,
The current
the
annual
gearbox,
fee
the motor and
this
everything
year is
elevated
$480.63.
above, mixed liquor.
The
so none of
proposed
it's
fee for
submersed.
FY
They're
23
very
is
easy to work on. Oil changes can be done from the
$499.52.
bridge.
So
I
this
think they're
basically
gonna be a much
equates to
more
a
reliable
3.93%
And in
increase over
The
FY
research that we've done
22.
in talking to people.
The wastewater advisory
these have been
committee
much
did
better
meet
for
on
plants.
Thursday, March 31st at 10 o'clock, and we reviewed the budget.
Next slide.
They didn't have any concerns, and they voted
So this is
unanimously
just
to
a summary
approve the budget.
again. So we have a total right now of 2,490 user units.
And
The
any
current
questions?
annual fee this year is $480.63. The proposed fee for FY '23 is $499.52.
Did I
So this
just
basically
stun
equates
everybody
to a
into silence?
3.9% increase over FY '22. The wastewater advisory committee did meet on Thursday, March 31st at 10 o'clock, and we reviewed the budget. They didn't have any concerns, and they voted unanimously
Second.
to,
All in favor?
I think the presentation was very clear.
and any
As they
questions?
always have been, so
Yeah,
it's very good.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. And this would be item 7,
Did I just stun everybody into
presentation of
silence?
recreation special revenue budget. Hello.
Hi, good evening, everyone. It's nice to see everyone in person. So tonight I have a presentation for you for our special revenue budget for the Parks and Recreation Department. And just as a reminder, we do have two budgets in the Recreation and Parks Department, the general fund and then our special revenue budget.
As they always have been, so, very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Can't start the presentation because I don't have the mouse.
And this would be item 7. Thank you. Presentation of Recreation Special Revenue Budget.
Everybody know the
Hello.
keyboard sequence?
Hi, good evening, everyone. It's nice to see everyone in person. So tonight I have a presentation for you for our special revenue budget for the Parks and Recreation Department. And just as a reminder, we do have two budgets in the Recreation and Parks Department, the general fund and then our special revenue budget.
Sorry, we lost the mouse. I can't start the presentation because I don't have the mouse.
We're having technical difficulties.
We need one of those, like when we were kids, the screen technical difficulty.
Pass the popcorn.
Here we go.
Oh, good.
Okay,
Great.
great. You can go ahead to page 2, please. So the special revenue budget, sorry, includes revenues and expenses for all of our programs, events, and camps. So this includes user fees, donations, sponsorships on the revenue side,
We're having
and then all
technical
expenses
difficulties.
associated with the programming. This funding model gives us the department flexibility throughout the year to start new
Pass the
programming,
popcorn.
to eliminate the dud programs, and to keep
Great.
new ideas You can go ahead progressing. to page 2, please. So at the end of the fiscal year, any So the excess special revenues revenue budget- then get transferred back Sorry. into the general fund. Includes revenues and slide. expenses for all of our programs. As you can see from events, this slide, a majority of our revenue does come in and through our summer camps, So this the after-school includes program, and our user sports and fees, fitness programs. donations, The sponsorships revenues from on these the revenue programs help side, offset and the then all costs of our expenses special associated events with the programming. and the other This programming funding we model have. gives us the
Next slide.
department flexibility throughout the year to start new programming.
The expenses
to
that
eliminate
we
the dud
take in on this
programs,
budget
and to
include
keep,
all of our programming
new ideas,
expenses. And this would
progressing.
include admission tickets, fuel,
So at the end of the
and
fiscal
any,
year, any excess
supplies
revenues
for the
then
actual
get transferred
program.
back
But it
into
also
the general
includes
fund.
our software fees,
Next slide.
a custodian for our building, and
As you can see
various
from this slide, a majority
dues that
of
we
our
have
revenue
for the
does come in
recreation
through our summer
department
camps,
and our turf
the after-school
maintenance.
program, and our sports and fitness programs.
Next slide.
The revenues from these programs help
You can
offset
see in
the costs of
2021, our
special
revenues had
events
exceeded our
and the
budget
other
due to
programming
the
we
all-day
have.
childcare we held because of the COVID and because the children were not
The
in school
expenses
full-time.
that
And we
we,
held
take in on
school-age
this
children
budget
in our
include
facility
all of our
all day
programming
while they were
expenses,
learning
and this would
remotely.
include
And this was a
admission
partnership we
tickets,
had with
fuel,
the RSU 21.
and any,
In
supplies for the
2022, we
actual
started
program.
bringing
But it
back
also
some of our
includes
programming.
Our software fees.
And this
the
included
custodian
summer
for our
camps
building,
and some of our
various,
outdoor sports
dues
programs.
that we have for the
In
recreation
2023,
department
this
and our
next year,
turf
we plan on
maintenance.
bringing back a lot of our old favorites,
Next slide.
including Chalk the Port, Prelude
You can see in
Craft Fair,
2021,
our
our
drop-in
revenues had
programs at
exceeded our
Consolidated
budget,
School,
due to
and
the
then
all-day
also looking to
childcare we
start some
held,
new programming.
because of the COVID and
slide.
because the children
This
were
is
not
a
in school
summary of
full-time,
the
and
special
we
revenue
held,
budget,
school-age
where
children
you can
in our
see all the
facility
different revenues,
all day while they were
net
learning
revenues that
remotely.
come in for the different
And this was a
categories of our
partnership we
programs,
had with
along
the
with
RSU
the
21.
general expenses.
In
This year, we
2022,
will
we
plan on
started bringing
transferring
back some of our
$60,000
programming.
to the general fund.
And this included summer camps and some of our outdoor sports
Next slide.
programs. In 2023,
That's the
next year, we
Recreation
plan on
Department's special
bringing
revenue
back a
budget.
lot
I'd
of
be
our
happy
old
to
favorites,
answer any
including Chalk the
questions.
Port, Prelude Craft Fair, our drop-in programs
many
at
children did
Consolidated
you have in
School, and then
the
also
after-school
looking to
fair?
start some new
Our
programming.
after-school program right now totally has
Next
about
slide.
78 children, but they
This
don't
is a
come every
summary
day.
of
So
the
on an
special
average day,
revenue
we have
budget,
about 30.
where you can see all the different revenues, net revenues that come in for the different categories of our programs, along with the general expenses. This year, we will plan on transferring $60,000 to the general
All in
fund.
favor?
Thank you.
Yes.
Next slide. That's the Recreation Department
And this
Special
will be
Revenue
item
Budget. I'd be
8,
happy to answer
Presentation
any
of Cape
questions.
Porpoise Pier Budget.
Good evening, everyone. Oh, Chris Mayo is here with
Our
me as
after-school
well.
program right now totally has
Which is
about
great.
78 children, but they don't
I
come
also
every
have a
day.
slide,
So on an average day, we have about 30.
Maybe, perhaps. I'll get going, though. The revenues for the pier went up 120,000, which mainly is driven by the fuel costs.
Thank you.
We anticipate a 40% increase in the
And this would be
gas
item
and diesel,
eight,
and when
presentation
you're
of Cape
selling
Corpus Pier
15,000 gallons of gas and 75,000 gallons of diesel.
Good evening, everyone.
That's
Oh,
quite
Chris
an
Mayo
uptick.
is here
So,
with me as well.
Of course, we have the expense side, but we also have the revenue
I also
side,
have a
and
slide.
made slight, maybe
Perhaps.
bit of money on it
get going
by
now.
increasing
The revenues
the
for
for
the pier,
the markup.
went up
Thank you.
120,000.
So the
which,
moorings
mainly,
went up for
is
the
driven by the
tidal
fuel
water.
costs.
We anticipate a 40%
Maybe I should have him
increase
explain.
in the
For moorings,
gas
we
and
have
diesel,
two,
and
we
when you're
previously had two
selling
classifications of
15,000
moorings in
gallons of
Kennebunkport.
gas and 75,000 gallons of
We
diesel.
previously
That's
had
quite
two
an uptick.
different classifications of
So,
moorings for
Of course, we have the expense side,
deep
but
water
we also
inside
have
of
the
Cape
revenue
Porpoise
side
and
made,
all surrounding moorings
slight,
in Goose Rocks, Patty Creek,
of
Turbot's
money
Creek,
on it by
and any
increasing,
tidewater moorings in Cape
the-
Porpoise
the-
were classified as tidal moorings, and those were a
markup,
split
thank
fee. The deep water moorings
so the
were
moorings
$90
went
in
up
Cape Porpoise, and
for
everything
the
outside
tidal
or tidal
water.
were $45. And
Maybe I should have him
we
explain.
looked at that and took For some moorings, we surrounding have two- we comparisons of previously had other two towns classifications and of realized moorings that in the Kennebunkport. $45 fee was previously extremely had low. two And different in looking at the classifications of budget, it was moorings an area for, we thought we could bring our fees deep into water compliance with inside of surrounding Cape communities, Porpoise and as all well as surrounding boosting our moorings revenues slightly to in offset Goose some Rocks, Patty deficits. Creek, Turbot's Creek, and any tidewater moorings
there's
in
that.
Cape Porpoise were classified as tidal
The
moorings.
board
and those were a
voted
split
for
fee.
an increase
The deep water
to the
moorings
dues
were
to,
$90 in Cape
related to
Porpoise, and everything
CPI.
outside or
Last
tidal,
year was a
were
1.6%
$45.
CPI.
And
This year,
we
big
looked at
big
that
hike,
and
7.9%.
took some surrounding comparisons of other towns
when I talked
and
with
realized
Chris,
that the $45
he said that,
fee
the board was
extremely low.
on board with that.
And in looking at the
They
budget,
had
it was
voted
an
for
area
it.
we thought we could bring
We
our
have
fees
the
into
annual
compliance with
lease
surrounding
for
communities,
the Chowder
as well as
House,
boosting our revenues
and
slightly to
again,
offset
the
some deficits.
fuel income of, so there's that, 362,000. On the expense side,
an
we,
increase to the dues.
the biggest increase was
related to
$100,000 to the fuel.
Last year was a 1.6%
And this year, we decided to
CPI.
actually budget for depreciation.
Big hike, 7.9%.
When you budget for an
when I talked
enterprise
with Chris,
account,
he said
the
that, board
depreciation
was
looks like an
board
expense. So
with
it
that,
ends up
they
affecting
had
your
voted for it.
ending,
We
what
have
you put
the
back
annual
into the
lease
program,
for
if you
the
will.
Chowder House.
So we are budgeting
And
for
again, the,
depreciation now.
fuel income
The
of,
total overall budget increase was almost a 35%.
362,000.
Again,
On the expense side, we
30% of that is for the
the
fuel.
biggest
which,
increase was $100,000.
we get
to
back through the
fuel.
revenue.
And this year, we decided to actually
can answer
budget
any
for
questions
depreciation.
So the
When,
three changes on the revenue
You
side are
budget
the mooring
for an
fees,
enterprise
the
account.
markup on gas going
the
from 45 cents to
depreciation
55
looks
cents,
like
and the
an
CPI
expense,
on
so
peer
it
member
ends up
dues.
affecting your
The only other
ending,
change on the expense
what you
side
put back
is
into
I
the
am
program,
recommending
if
we
you will.
transfer
So
the
we are
parking
budgeting for
attendants,
depreciation now.
salaries from the
The
Cape
total
Corpus Pier
overall
budget
budget increase
to
was
the Dock
almost a
Square parking lot budget,
35%.
as the parking lot
Again,
attendants are
the,
really
you know,
tourism-based,
30%
not
of
commercial
that is
fishing
is
based.
for the fuel.
And so I think it makes
which,
more sense to use those revenues to
We get
offset
back
that
through the
expense.
revenue. Chris can
You
answer
can
any
see on your first sheet, the years of budget versus actual on Cape Porpoise Pier. The last few years, we have run a deficit in that account. And so our hope is with this budget that we will start eating away at that deficit and building a positive fund balance. Is I am recommending we transfer the parking attendants
I
salaries
move that we
from
approve the Cape Porpoise
Pier
Pier
budget
budget.
to the Dock Square
All in
parking
favor?
lot budget, as the parking lot attendants are really tourism-based
Thank you,
and
Chris.
not
Thank you,
commercial
Denise.
fishing-based.
Thank you.
So I think it makes more sense to use those revenues to offset that
And
expense.
we are on number,
You can see on your first sheet, the years of budget versus actual on Cape Porpoise Pier. The last few years,
Review
we have run a
and
deficit
consider
in that
conflict
account.
of interest
And so our
policy
hope is
for
with this budget that we
ARPA
will,
grant
start eating away at
funds.
that deficit and building a positive fund balance. So the American Rescue Plan funds that you just voted on in the warrant, the town will be receiving $385,000 over a
All in
2-year
favor?
period. Part of the requirement by the federal government to expend those funds is that the selectmen adopt a policy, a conflict of interest policy, on the expenditure of those funds, in particular. So the policy is in your packet, and it really deals with making sure
Review
that
and
whoever is
consider
overseeing the
conflict of
expenditure
interest
of the funds
policy for
is not benefiting from
ARPA
them. I don't see any,
grant funds.
It's pretty boilerplate.
yep, I don't see any issue with us being able to comply with this Plan funds that you just
I
voted on
recommend
in the
that
warrant.
we adopt the
town will
policy
be
as written
receiving
here for
$385,000
the
over a 2-year period.
ARPA grant funds.
Part of the requirement by the
All in favor?
federal government to
With
expend
5?
those funds is that the selectmen
Motion
adopt a
passes.
policy, a conflict of interest policy on the
And
expenditure of
number 10,
those funds,
short-term
in
rental
particular.
update.
So the policy is in your packet, and it really deals with making sure that whoever is overseeing the expenditure of the funds is not benefiting from them. I don't see any,
It's pretty
everybody.
boilerplate, Eli.
I don't see any issue
Good to see you.
with us being able to comply
We've
with
got
this
a
policy.
I
kind of
recommend
brief
that we,
short-term rental
adopt the policy
update
as
tonight,
written here
and also staff is seeking feedback on one item.
All in favor?
So there's no presentation, but there's a memo in your packet,
Motion
and I'll
passes.
read through the points for those listening at home.
And number 10, short-term
So as
rental
of
update.
April 11th, we've issued a total of 405 short-term rental licenses. That's generated approximately $175,000 in registration fees. After doing a little bit of analysis on those license holders, some things we noticed with of the 405 total licenses, 338 are unique license holders, so 338 individuals. There's no presentation, 7 of the license holders obtained 3 licenses, 23 obtained 2 licenses. So as of April 11th, 109 licenses, which is about 27%, were granted to town residents. That's generated approximately $175,000. That's based off of what their mailing address was, so it's not a perfect number, but that was doing a little bit of analysis on those just to give us an idea. Some things we noticed with currently there's approximately 3 unregistered short-term rentals currently advertised, so that we consider kind of illegal operation. Individuals. The board authorized a late registration period. If you remember, for the month of February, we had recommended, because it was the first year, we offer a one-time limited late registration period to try to get more people into compliance. We had 10 people apply, and 7 of which were eligible, so that was great. So just to give us 7 more licenses. 3 applied and were ineligible, so they were denied. 3 unregistered
Give an example of why they
short-term
were
rentals currently
ineligible?
advertised. So sure, kind of illegal operation.
And not specific, but
Yeah. The most common would be
a late registration period.
maybe what they're trying to rent is not a dwelling.
Because it was the
It's
first
not a dwelling
year,
unit. It's not a
we
legal
offer,
dwelling unit. So maybe they're renting out a basement room or
people into compliance.
with no window and stuff like that.
exactly.
10
So that might be
people
one. Another
apply,
might
and
be
7 of which were,
insufficient rental
eligible,
history.
so
So maybe they
that was
just bought
great.
the property. Didn't
we
totally
approved
understand
7
the
more
ordinance, and they
licenses,
applied,
3
and so
applied and were
but
ineligible, so they were
every
denied.
time that that situation happens, there's always a conversation with the applicant, so that people understand what's happening, and
Not specific.
they'd be invited to
The
apply
most
again in the
common
future if
would
they can
be,
remedy that ineligibility. Maybe what they're trying
Thank
to
you.
rent is not a dwelling. We've got
is not a
2
dwelling
public
unit, it's not a legal,
reminders.
dwelling unit.
One is for
so maybe they're renting out
short-term
a
rental
basement
operators.
room or-
The ordinance requires
No
inspection
window,
every
exactly.
5 years.
So that might be one.
So
Another might be
not every unit will be
insufficient rental
inspected this
history.
year
So
or
maybe
even
they
next
just bought the
year.
property,
But code
didn't totally
enforcement
understand
will
the
start
ordinance, and they
contacting
applied,
property
and so,
owners to schedule those those inspections.
Every time that that situation happens,
that
there's
will be
always a
starting in May.
conversation with the applicant.
And
so
for
that,
neighbors and community
people
members,
understand what's happening, and
there is a
they'd be
24/7
invited to apply again
hotline
in the
with
future if they
the
can remedy that
local area code
ineligibility.
listed there. and an online website.
We've got
If you
two
are,
public
if you need
reminders.
to report a suspected
One is
violation
for,
or file a complaint for
short-term
rental.
operators. The
We've
ordinance
had,
requires inspection
requests in
every
the
5
last
years.
couple weeks about
So
posting
not every unit will be
a list of
inspected
short-term
this year
rental
or even next year,
addresses on the
but
town
code-
website.
the
That is
code
something we plan to
enforcement
do,
will start contacting
and we should have that
property
up
owners to schedule those,
finished and
those
posted next week.
inspections. So that will be starting in May. And
The next item is about a potential setting of a cap.
There is a 24/7
So the ordinance
hotline
authorizes
with a,
the select board
local
to
area code listed
adopt
there,
or set a cap
and,
on the number of
an
licenses
online website
that
if
can be
you
issued.
are- if you
So
need to report a
right now, staff
suspected
is
violation
seeking
or file a
requests
complaint
for the
for
type of
short-term rental.
information that would be
We've
useful.
had, requests
If
in the
that was
last
something that the
couple
board
weeks about
wanted to
posting,
discuss in a future
a
meeting.
list of short-term
So,
rental addresses.
You can
on
think
the town
about that. We
website.
could
That
talk
is
about
something we plan
that.
to do, and we should
but
have that up.
We
We're
may want to wait
finished
and
and
see
posted
how
next week.
this summer goes.
So.
Why do we want to wait?
The
till
next
see how
item
the
is
summer
about
goes?
a
We already know
potential
how many
setting
we
of a
have,
cap.
Yeah.
and we
So
said
the
once we know how
ordinance
many we have,
authorizes
we're
the
gonna
select
set the
board
cap.
to
and I
adopt
believe
or
that we
set a
should
cap on the number of
It's
licenses
especially
that can be
alarming to
issued.
me
So
that
right now, staff is
73%
seeking
of
requests
the
for the
rentals
type of
are owned by
information
people who don't
that would
live
be
here.
useful.
And my
If that was something that
intent
the
would
board
be
was,
that
wanted to
whatever
discuss
cap
in a
we
future
set
meeting.
would
So
regulate that
you
number
can think about that,
so
we
that
could talk about
it
that.
doesn't grow like
but
it's grown in
We
the
We're-
may
past
want to wait and see
several
how
years.
this summer goes.
So that's where I'm coming from, and I don't think
Why
we
do we
waited
wanna
till the
wait
end of the summer
till see
because
how
we
the
know
summer goes?
how
We
many
already
we
know
have.
how many we have.
Yeah.
And we said, once we know how
Yeah.
many we have, we're gonna set the cap.
What
I don't
would
know
be-
what the cap
We should
is.
set a cap.
We've gotta
Yeah.
discuss that and work it out.
Especially
I have no
alarming to
idea,
me
but that
What would be helpful, Eli,
73%
is that if we had the
of the
number
rentals
of
are owned by people
you
who
know,
don't live here.
full-time, year-round
And
residents
my
in town,
intent
because we
would
probably
be
want to base our
that
cap
whatever
on a
cap we
percentage
set would
of something, both for
regulate that
legal
number so that it
perspective
doesn't
and to
grow
give us
like
a
it's grown
baseline
in
as
the
we go
past
forward into the
several
future.
years. So that's
Yeah.
where I'm coming
Great.
from, and I don't think we waited till the end of the summer because we know how many we have.
If you
Lift
think of,
something, Warner?
yeah,
Yeah, so the ordinance does talk a little bit about
I don't know what the
using a
cap is.
percentage of
We've
dwelling
gotta
units, and
discuss that and
that's,
work
you
it
know,
out.
something that we had talked
have no
about
idea.
before, so that it gives
What
us
would
kind
be
of a
helpful,
consistent
Eli,
way
is
to
if we had the
measure,
number
you know, how many additional licenses may be
year-round
issued in the
residents
future.
town,
So
because
just
we
for
probably
everyone to
wanna
remember,
base
when
our
we're
cap on
talking
a
about,
percentage
you know,
of-
caps on licenses,
of
this is
something,
for
both for
new
legal,
licenses, not for renewals of
perspective
ones
and
that
to
have
give
been
us
issued.
a baseline as we go
So that's an
forward.
important distinction for folks to understand.
yeah.
But
Great.
that's one of the metrics that we had talked about in terms
If
of
you think of
using,
Warner?
just so that it helps us, you know, better establish
So
a
the ordinance does
long-term
talk a little bit
criteria.
about
So that's one of the
using
things
a
we can come
percentage
back
of
to you
dwelling
with,
units, and that's,
to
you know,
maybe see
something that
what
we had talked about
that might
before,
look like in terms
so
of a
that it gives us
percentage
kind of a
set.
consistent
Oh,
way
Warner, one
to
other thing we
measure,
might wanna look at,
you know, how many
and I'm not
additional
sure how we will
licenses,
address this,
may
but
be
how
issued
many
in
of
the
those
future.
licenses are in Goose
So just for
Rocks?
everyone to
That
remember,
is
when we're
exempt
talking
from the
about,
cap,
you know,
but
caps on licenses,
those
this is
numbers
for
should count
new
towards the
licenses,
cap.
not for
Yeah,
renewals.
so that's
of
another
ones that
piece
have
of the
been issued.
criteria that'll be helpful for us to
So that's an
understand
important
is, you know,
distinction
what do we
for
use
folks to
for dwelling
understand.
unit numbers? Are we using
But that's
dwelling
one of the-
units
well, that's one of the metrics that we
for
had
the
talked
town in
about
its
in
entirety,
terms
or are
of
we going to
using
exclude
just so
that
it helps
Goose Rocks
us, you know,
neighborhood
better
identified area
establish,
from that
a
number? So
long-term criteria.
we can
So
come
that's
back
one of
with
the things we
some,
can come back
you know,
to you with,
potential scenarios,
maybe
just
see what
based on
that
some of
might
those
look like.
numbers.
I don't have an
That
answer for you
percentage
as to
set.
that, but
So
Warner,
if you
one
bring
other
us the
thing we
numbers,
might wanna
we
look
can
at,
work our way
and
through it,
I'm
I'm
not
sure.
sure how we will address
Okay.
this, but how many
Great.
of those licenses are in
Thank
Goose
you.
Rocks? Because that is exempt from the cap, but those numbers should
Good.
count towards the cap.
Yeah, so that's another
And
piece of the
11,
criteria
update
that'll be
on
helpful
well
for
water
us to
tests along
understand.
Beechwood
You know,
Avenue.
what do we use for dwelling unit numbers? Are we
I've got
using
one
for
more thing.
I thought you walked away.
for
It's
the
okay.
town in
On
its
the back
entirety,
of that, or
are we
on the
going to
next page,
exclude
just a
Goose
brief
Rocks
note
neighborhood
about
identified
enforcement.
area from that number?
So
we can
just
come
kind
back
of
with some,
reminding folks
yeah,
that
potential
complaints as they
scenarios
come
just
in are
based on some of
investigated
those
by
numbers.
first
I don't have an
communicating with the property owner, property manager, and/or police department. Our office has been receiving complaints, and we've been working with property owners and complainants to find resolutions. And as we work through these complaints, we're
And
establishing
11,
kind of
update
what criteria
on
will
groundwater
elevate
tests
these
along
complaints to
Beechwood
be
Avenue.
brought in front of the board. But we do
Oh, I'm
anticipate
sorry.
that,
I thought you walked away.
we are working Okay, with complaints on the right back now, of and so that, or we'll on be the next bringing some page, in the just a future to the brief board note to about kind of seek enforcement. feedback on that too. So just kind of reminding folks that complaints as
Sure,
they come in are investigated
complaints.
by first
Let's see, I don't know
communicating with the
if you
property
want
owner,
to
property
just a little
manager,
bit more.
and/or police department.
Well,
Our office
you
has
know,
been receiving
We
complaints,
have,
and we've
s-
been
you know,
working
we
with
have
property
some
owners and
that
complainants
are,
to find
you know, maybe
resolutions.
behavior related, you know, so.
And as we work through these complaints, we're
Some of the complaints that we've been
establishing
getting
kind of
have
what
been related to
criteria will
parking.
elevate these
You know, for
complaints to be
example,
brought in front of the
you know,
board.
we set within the
But we do
ordinance, you know,
anticipate that,
having folks
you know,
identify
we
designated
are working with
parking
complaints
areas.
right now, and so we'll
And
be
so
bringing
we've
some,
gotten
in the
complaints
future
about
to the
when
board
tenants
to
park
kind of seek
outside of
feedback
that
on that too.
designated parking area. So that's it's one example of, you know, one that we've seen.
Sure.
We've seen others
complaints-
where,
Let's see, I don't know if you want
maybe
to
the, you know, the
slip
tax
a bit
card
more.
maybe had the house identified as, you know, as
Well,
a
we-
5-bedroom,
you know,
but maybe it's really a 6-bedroom.
have-
And so there's some
you know, we have
discrepancy in
some
some of the
that
records
are,
in terms of
you know,
figuring
maybe
that out.
behavior
So,
related,
you know, so we work through some of those.
some of the complaints
Some
that
of
we've
those
been
will,
getting have
you
been
know,
related to
are just a
parking.
matter of
You know, for
field
example,
verification. For
you
instance,
know, we
maybe a
set within
bedroom
the
count is
ordinance,
just
you
doing
know,
a,
having
when
folks
we do our
identify
inspection, we'll
designated
be able to
parking areas.
reconcile the records.
And so we've gotten complaints
Others,
about when
when it,
tenants
you know, the
park
behavior
outside of that
related
designated
ones are
parking area. So
a little
that's
bit
one
of a different
that's
animal.
one example
You know,
of, you know, one that
because
we've seen.
some of those are,
We've
you know, are
seen
a
others
tenant
where,
issue, and some of those
maybe the,
are,
you know, the
and some of
tax
these
card
others are owner
maybe had
issues.
the house
So,
identified as, you know,
Eli
as a
said, we're
5-bedroom,
working
but maybe it's
through,
really a
you know, figuring out
6-bedroom,
how we
and so
kind of
there's some
gauge and
discrepancy
manage
in some of the records
the
in
difference in
terms
the
of
severity,
figuring that out.
you know,
So,
of the ones that come in. So,
so we work through some of those.
I would say
some
you
of
kind
those
of have
will,
some
you know,
clerical
are just a
ones that
matter
are
of field
issues, and then
verification.
we have
For
some,
instance, maybe
you
a
know,
bedroom
nuisance
count is
ones.
just doing a.
But
When we do our inspection, we'll be able to reconcile the records. Others, when it, you know, the behavior related ones
that's it.
are a little bit of a different.
Thanks, Eli.
Thank you, Eli.
Because some of those are, you know, are a tenant issue, and some of those are.
And number 11,
some of these
update
others are
on
owner
well
issues.
water test
So,
along Beechwood Avenue.
as Eli said,
Oh, hi.
we're working
I'm back
through,
again.
you know, figuring out how we
So the
kind of
last time I
gauge
had
and
spoken
manage,
with you,
the
9
difference
of
in
the
the
14
severity,
homes
you know,
had
of
been
the ones
sampled,
that
and
come
we'd
in.
received the
So,
test results back on it.
I would say
Since
we
then,
kinda
the
have
other
some
5 have also
clerical
been
ones
sampled,
that are issues,
and we got the
and then
results
we have
back
some,
on that.
you know, nuisance ones.
Those 5 remaining homes did test under the interim PFAS drinking limit, or level for PFAS.
And that's it.
That Maine DEP set for their project.
Thank you, Eli.
So at this time, we've had to install one filter set up at one
And
house,
number 11,
and there'll
update
also be
on
a
well
filter set
water
up
test
going
along
in up at the
Beechwood Avenue.
highway garage.
Hi.
I'm back again.
The highest test that
so
we
the last
had
time
on
I
the
had
remaining
spoken
5
with
homes
you,
was
9
nanograms
of
per
14
liter, which is
homes
9
had
parts
been
per
sampled,
trillion.
and we'd received the test
So
results
it's
back
my
on it.
understanding now that these
Since
test
then, the
results will
other
be forwarded
5
to the
have also
state
been sampled,
geologist,
and
and they're
we
going to
got the
kind
results
of look at
back
the
on
characteristics of the watershed.
Those 5 remaining homes did
digest the
test under
results that
the,
they have, and
interim
determine whether or
drinking-
not there needs to
PFAS
be any
drinking limit,
further sampling
or level
or
for monitoring
PFAS
in the area.
that Maine DEP set for their project. So at this time, we've had to install one filter.
Did highway test
set up
high?
at one house.
Yes, it did.
And there'll
Yes,
also be
very high.
a filter setup going in up at the highway garage. The highest test that we had
Any
on
other
the remaining 5 homes was 9 nanograms per liter, which is 9 parts per trillion. So it's my understanding now that these test results
Consider
will be
Goose Rock
forwarded to the
Beach
state geologist,
Advisory Committee
and they're going to
recommendation
kind of look at the
regarding
characteristics of the
landscaping,
watershed,
construction, and maintenance
uh,
vehicles.
digest
There
the
has been
results
no
that they have,
change,
and determine
and
whether or
we've
not there needs to be
decided that
any
we should probably get
further
together
sampling
and,
or
you know,
monitoring
really
in the area.
take a look at this and make some changes before we vote again. So we're going to table that for now.
Did highway test high?
Yes, it did.
Okay.
Yeah, very high.
And this would be number 13. This was, consider the request from Maine Lobstermen's Association for donation to support MLA's Legal Defense Fund to save Maine lobstermen. And I think, Alan, landscaping, construction, and maintenance vehicles,
No.
there has
I
been
was
no
wrong.
change, and we've decided
Sorry.
that we should probably get together and.
Well,
and,
since Alan
you
and
know,
I are both
really,
members of the,
take a look
M-
at this and make some
are
changes.
both
before
members
we
of the MLA, we
vote
certainly
again.
couldn't vote on this
So we're gonna
anyways,
table
but
that for now.
my suggestion is that this is a very worthwhile
And this would be number 13.
endeavor that the Maine Lobstermen's Association has been on. I
This was,
personally
consider
contributed over
the
$1,000
request
of
from
my
Maine
business money
Lobstermen's
towards it
Association for
because,
donation
you know,
to
if we don't
support
win,
MLA's Legal
there
Defense
may not
Fund
be a
to
fishery
save Maine
anymore.
lobstermen.
And it's certainly,
And
this,
I think,
make no
Alan,
mistake, this isn't about whales, this is about money. This is a great
she won't.
opportunity for
environmental groups to fundraise, because as we've all seen on the news.
Well, since Alan
It's
and I
borne
are
out
members
in the
of
Gulf of Maine as it's warmed
and
up. The
both
prime
members
food
of the
source of
MLA,
the
we
right
certainly
whale,
can
the
vote on this
copepod,
anyways,
has
but,
left, and the whales
my
are being
suggestion is
seen in
this is a
Atlantic
very
Canada. They're
worthwhile,
being run over by ships and being
endeavor
entangled
that
with
the
Canadian
Maine
fishing
Lobster
gear because
Association has
they
been
don't
on. I
have the
personally
same
contributed over $1,000
restrictions
of my
that we
business
have.
money
We have
towards it.
because, you know, if we
About a
don't
third
win,
of my
springtime
there may
getting
not
ready
be
to
a
put
fisherman
my gear back in
anymore,
the water
and
is
it's
spent
certainly this. Make no mistake,
doing all
this
of these
isn't
things
about
to my
whales,
ropes,
this is
et cetera,
about
to make
money.
them
This is
whale
a
safe,
great
if you will.
opportunity for
Environmental groups
to
as the whales
fundraise,
have shifted
because as we've
away,
all seen on the
it's
news
not the
and
lobstermen of the Gulf
borne out
of Maine,
in
the
the-
Gulf of Maine, as
that's
it's the
warmed
issue,
up,
so
prime food source of the
anyways,
right
I'll get off
whale,
my
the
soapbox,
copepod
but I don't
has
think that we
left,
should
and
give
the
them
whales are
money,
being
because if we give them
seen
money
in
in
Atlantic
Atlantic Canada,
everybody.
they're being
Yeah,
run
well,
over by
the
ships
point
and
is
being
that I
entangled
think
with
we would
Canadian fishing
like
gear
to
because
invite,
they don't have the same
I talked to,
restrictions that we have. We
Association this
have
afternoon, and I talked
about a
to
third
Kevin
of my
Kelly,
springtime getting
he
ready
said
to
that at
put
the
my
next
gear back in the
meeting,
water is spent
which would be a couple of weeks.
doing all of these things to my
that
ropes,
they
et cetera,
would
to make them
definitely have somebody
whale
here
safe,
to
if you
talk
will.
more about this in
So,
depth.
as the whales have
And
shifted away,
probably will be Patrice
it's not the
McCarran,
lobstermen of the Gulf
McCarran.
of Maine.
McCarran, yeah.
The issue.
Chris
So,
Wells is also.
anyways, I'll get off my soapbox, but I don't think that we should give them money. Tested some of this experimental
Right,
gear.
but I think
yeah,
Patrice will
well,
be
the
here.
point is that I think we would like to
Kevin
invite,
said to me today that they're very interested in actually coming and speaking to the board. And I talked to Kevin Kelly, somebody will be here. He said that next meeting, talk more about this, a couple of weeks from today, explain it in depth. They would
Well, I think
definitely
it's
have somebody here
important
to
that the
talk
truth
more
gets
about
out, because we can't let one side control the narrative.
right, and also, even if the town doesn't do the donating, it's nice to bring it to the attention of our residents, because we are
tested
a
some of this
fisherman's
experimental
community, and some of us make a living off the lobster industry, and, you know, with our restaurants and all of that. So we want our residents to also participate and maybe do some donating as well. So we will have this, we're hoping to have this woman here
important that the truth
for
gets
our
out,
next meeting.
We can't
So,
let one side.
moving on from there.
She's very
Right.
knowledgeable.
And also,
about this
even
whole
if the
situation.
town doesn't do the donating, it's nice to bring it to the So we attention will move on to our item residents, 14, consider because request we to are purchase a back, fisherman's
back
community,
tax
acquired
uh,
property at 133 Some of us Main make a Street. living off the lobster industry, and, you know, with our restaurants and all of that. So we want our residents to also participate.
So on January,
and,
or in
maybe
January,
do
we
some
foreclosed on the
donating as
property
well.
located at
So we will have
133
this-
Main
We're
Street,
hoping to have this woman here.
all are aware
For our
of.
next meeting.
We
So,
tried
moving
to
on
no
from
avail
there.
to reach out to the owner of the property, and eventually her
So we
sister
will
reached
move
out
on
to
to
us,
item
and
14, consider
unfortunately,
request
the
to
owner
purchase
passed
back-
away
To purchase
in
back
South
tax,
Africa.
acquired property
The
at
sister is
133
living
Main
in New
Street.
Zealand, and her and her brother are, have been bequeathed the estate. They're requesting to pay all the back taxes on the property.
we foreclosed
And,
on the property located at
Also,
133 Main Street.
if you allow it,
all are aware
the
of.
law states that we
We,
have to add
tried
on
to no avail
the,
to,
an
reach out
estimated,
to the owner of the property.
the next year's property
and,
taxes.
um,
So that
eventually her
amount would
sister
be
reached out to us, and
$9,930.
unfortunately, the owner passed
They're
away,
willing to wire
in
the
South
funds
Africa.
into our bank account.
The sister is living
so that
in
they
New
can
Zealand,
clear
and
it up
her
and
her brother
take care of the
are,
property. Have been bequeathed the estate. They're requesting to pay all the back taxes on the property, and also, if you allow it, the law states that we have to add on
We,
an
yeah, so what we
estimated,
would like to do is get permission
the
from
next
you, so
year's
a motion would be
property
good.
taxes.
We'll take care of the
So
money,
that
and then we'll
amount
bring
would
you
be
back a quick claim deed to sign off.
$9,930. They're willing to
So,
wire the
second.
funds into our bank account, so
Okay,
that
all
they
in
can
favor?
clear it up and,
So we-
perfect, thank
We
you.
are five. Thank you, Denise.
That word, other business.
Oh, my goodness. All right, we're on to 15, and this is other business. Pat, do you have anything?
No, I don't.
Okay, Mike?
I have nothing.
All right,
We-
and Alan?
Yeah, so what we would like to do is get permission from you,
Ed?
so a motion would be
Only that
good.
it's nice to
We'll
be
take
here in
care of the
person
money
and see
then we'll bring
everybody
you
out
back
here in the audience
quickly
tonight,
to
so
sign off.
thank you for coming.
I
So,
wish it were a
second.
nicer evening, but that's okay. All in favor?
No, because
I
if it was
know.
a nice evening, we'd all be looking out the window
Thank
going,
you.
why are we sitting in this
Thank-
meeting?
That's true. And I have nothing, so Lori?
Yeah, I would just like to thank Mike
All right,
and
we're on to 15,
Dave
and this
for
is
all the
other
work they did
business.
Yes.
on getting
Pat,
us
do you
ready
have
to try this hybrid
No, I
meeting style.
don't.
I know that it's
Okay,
been a bit of a
Mike?
challenge, but they did a great job. And I'd also
and
like to
Alan?
thank Yanina and April for coming and learning, because we are gonna need additional
Only
support.
that it's nice to be here in
And,
person and
you know,
see everybody
staff
out
is
here in
doing a
the
great job
audience
taking
tonight.
on this
So,
new
Thank you
challenge.
for coming.
I wish it were a
We're
nicer
all
evening,
appreciative.
but that's okay. They did a good job for us,
I
too,
know.
when we were all
We'd
virtual.
all be looking out the window going, why are we sitting in this meeting?
That's true.
How many
And
are,
I have nothing,
3
so
attendees.
Lori? 3.
That
Yeah, I
doesn't
would
count
just
the
like
people
to
watching
thank
us on
Mike
cable. Remember the
and-
old-fashioned?
Oh, right.
Oh, the
ways of
old-fashioned
work
way,
they
yeah.
did On getting us ready
That's funny.
to try this
I
hybrid meeting
move the
style. I
warrants.
know that it's been a bit of a challenge,
All
but
those
they
in
did a
favor?
great job. And I'd also like to thank
And
Janina and
we
April
are
for
going
coming and
into
learning,
executive
because we
session
are gonna
per
need additional support.
MRSA 1,
And,
405-6A
staff is doing
to
a great
consider
job taking on
personnel
this new
matters.
challenge.
And we will adjourn after that. We're all appreciative.
So we need a motion and a second?
They did a
Motion.
good job for us, too, when we were all
Second.
virtual. All in favor? Okay. Going into executive.
How many are, 3 attendees?
3.
That doesn't count the people watching us on cable. Remember the old-fashioned?
Oh,
Right.
the old-fashioned way, yeah. That's funny.
I move the warrants.
All those in favor? And we are going into executive session per MRSA 1, 405-6A to consider personnel matters. And we will adjourn after that.
So we need a motion and a second?
Motion. Second.
All in favor? Okay. Going into executive. We're ready?
Oh, Pat, we have to, well, we gotta close first.
Thank you. The,
So wait a
Select-
minute, are we open?
yes.
Yep.
The select board is back. We did not, we had an executive session. Do I need to read the numbers? MRSA 1, 405, 6A, to consider personnel matters. There was no action taken, and we are now ready to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for staying with us. We're ready?
Oh, Pat, we have to, well, we gotta close first. All right.
Thank you.
Oh,
The,
we gotta-
So wait a
Select-
minute, are we open?
Yes.
Yep.
The select board is back. We did not, we had an executive session. Do I need to read the numbers? MRSA 1, 405, 6A,